Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.
Well, hello, everybody. Greetings from the middle of the Suez Canal as we're transiting this amazing waterway between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. And, of course, our global travel update for Thursday, May 7th, 2026, on board the Crystal Serenity. Why am I here? It's part of the World Travel and Tourism Council Global Leaders Summit that is taking place on this ship as we transit the canal. All the travel leaders getting together at an inflection point in the world of travel and tourism, especially since the activities of the end of February, Iran, oil prices, availability of oil, and the impact on travel and tourism on a global scale. So lots of things to talk about. Of course, the Suez and I go back a long time. I've been coming to the Suez for over 4 decades. And of course, I was here after the Yom Kippur War in 1973 when the Israeli Air Force came in and literally sank the entire Egyptian Navy and all the merchant vessels right where I am right now in Port Said, and making the waterway unnavigable. I was also back here when they reopened it. And right now we're on a convoy of about 12 ships, ranging from bulk carriers and oil tankers and container ships as we make our way at about 4 or 5 knots, separated by 5-minute intervals through the canal. There's no threat of violence or war here. We're at least 2,000 kilometers away from Tehran. I was in Amman, Jordan 3 days ago, also very, very safe. And now that doesn't mean that tourists are here. At least they're not in Amman. The tourism is down 40 to 50% in Egypt. And that's the worst 4-letter word that starts with F when it comes to travel and tourism, fear. But I'm here to tell you that, yes, my last name is Greenberg, and I have no problem being here, and I'm not afraid at all because it's safe. And when it gets down to nations that depend so totally on travel and tourism for their GDP, it's in their best interests to keep it safe. And that's exactly what drives everything here. It's not just an economic driver, it's actually a driver of safety because of the economic impact. We can talk a little bit about that more later. But speaking of economic impact, in the last week, of course, we've lost Spirit Airlines. At 3 a.m. on Saturday morning last week, they ceased to operate. We all saw it coming. On our last global travel update, I reported on how serious the situation was for them and for other airlines as well. Let us not forget that 3 weeks ago, JetBlue was facing the possibility of Chapter 11 filing. But what saved them is that JetBlue actually owns their airplanes. So they put up 22 of their planes as collateral to secure a $500 million loan that would then allow the airline to not file and fly through the year 2026. 2027, nobody knows, all bets are off. But JetBlue did not have to make that filing. What was the problem with Spirit? They don't own their planes and they don't have any assets. There was nothing for them to pledge for a loan. And none of their creditors would advance any more money. Remember, they were already operating under Chapter 11. That's the U.S. government asking for a $500 million bailout, which the U.S. government considered doing until they looked at the balance sheet. There was nothing to secure the loan with. So they still wanted to do it. So the Trump administration said, okay, we'll give you the $500 million in the form of stock warrants, but we have to be first in position to get paid back. Well, that did not please the existing creditors at Spirit. They balked at that. The talk stalled, and Spirit literally ran out of money. So what does this mean for you? But more importantly, perhaps, what does this mean for other quote-unquote low-cost carriers? Well, let's be honest. There is no such thing as an ultra-low-cost carrier anymore. They have to pay for fuel at the same price as everybody else. They have to lease their planes at the same price or even higher. Their labor costs have not gone down, they've gone up. The cost of other goods and services they depend on have not gone down, they've gone up. What was their only competitive advantage in the marketplace? Whether it was Spirit, Frontier, Avelo, Allegiant, even JetBlue, they could offer low airfares. Well, listen, I failed math in high school, but I could do basic arithmetic. Let's look at the numbers. Low airfares weren't going to pay the fuel bills. That was the catalyst that put the nail in the coffin, and Spirit said goodbye. Now, many of you may remember that Spirit at one point wanted to merge with JetBlue back in 2022, but that was blocked by the Justice Department. Well, they blocked it from the Justice Department under the Biden administration, claiming it was anti-competitive, and I tend to agree with that. But even if they had merged, you'd go from two carriers in financial difficulty to a larger carrier in financial difficulty. And why did JetBlue want Spirit in the first place? They didn't want to operate Spirit as a subsidiary. They didn't even want to merge with Spirit. They wanted to absorb it. They wanted their planes and their pilots. They fly the exact same equipment, Airbus 320s, Airbus 321s. And if JetBlue wanted to expand as an airline, which in 2022 they did, they needed planes. If they'd gone to Airbus and say, we'd like to order 500 planes, Airbus would say to them, well, you got to wait 4 years. They take over Spirit, they get the planes, and the pilots are already trained to fly them tomorrow. That was the game plan. That didn't happen. And when the Justice Department blocked it, it set Spirit and JetBlue into it's sort of like parallel spiral downward. And the question was, who's going to lose money longer? The answer was JetBlue could lose money longer. Spirit couldn't. Spirit's gone. But what does this mean for the other low-cost carriers? Well, they were lining up behind Spirit saying, bail us out for $2.5 billion. That's no longer on the table. So what are we faced with? As oil becomes more expensive and less available, that these low-cost carriers may either have to merge or may have to fail. And that's not good for anybody. Because anytime you shrink capacity and demand stays the same, I don't have to tell you about the law of supply and demand. Where do airfares go? Nowhere but up. That's what we're seeing already. International airfares, as I speak, are up 37% over what they were in February. Domestic airfares on average, 20% up, and they're going up about 1% every 2 to 3 days. So that creates a challenge for you if you've got summer travel plans, you want to buy your airline ticket. What do? Do you wait and hope the fares go down? Let's be honest. If they open up the Straits of Hormuz today, this oil price issue wouldn't be resolved in any way, shape, or form for 6 to 9 months. That's just the way, that's the nature of the business. And they haven't opened up the straits. So my advice to anybody who wants to make travel plans and buy an airline ticket is this: buy it today, but then monitor it. And buy it today on a U.S. carrier. Tell you why. Let's say you buy a ticket today for $1,000, and a month and a half from now it drops to $700. You know what you do? Cancel that flight, get a full credit for $1,000, then reapply that credit for the $700 flight on the same flight, and get another residual credit for $300 you can use for another flight. That's the way the game gets played if you want to be a smart hedger and sort of bet against yourself or bet against the airline. But for every day you wait to buy a summer airfare right now, those airfares are going up between 1% and 2% every 3 days. You do the math, and that's compounded, by the way. So not necessarily a great idea. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, going back to Spirit, you know, everybody now is waxing nostalgic about Spirit. And I get it. Nobody likes to see an airline fail. I want to see as many airlines in the sky as possible because more competition brings lower fares and at least the idea of better service. What are we seeing now? Delta Airlines canceling a lot of their flights with service, meaning meal service or drink service of under 350 miles. We're seeing airlines spiking routes that they think are not profitable, when in fact the real reason why they're not profitable now is there are a lot of empty seats caused by, well, we already know. So it's sad when 17,000 people suddenly find themselves in an instant out of a job in an industry that's losing money now in this quarter because of low demand and high prices. So we want to wish everybody at Spirit the best of luck. I flew Spirit a lot, and you may have heard me talk about that over the years, about why Spirit was a better proposition for me on many cases than other legacy carrier flights. I'll give you an example. I was flying between, I forget, Chicago and Orlando. I think that was my flight. And I could fly that on Delta. It was $425. I could fly it on United or American, about $425. And what would I get for that? Maybe a Biscoff cookie, right? And mileage I couldn't redeem. Spirit flew it for $69. And it's what, a 2.5 hour flight? That would leave me a savings of over $400, right? Or over $380. For $380, I could go back and buy about 45 cases of Biscoff cookies. That's tangible. That's value, at least to me, but it proves the point of what you actually value the flight that you want to take for on which particular airline. So Spirit's proposition was very attractive to a large portion of the flying public that could have flexibility in their schedule and were leisure travelers, not business travelers. However, the business model didn't work because the numbers no longer added up. And when Spirit failed, a lot of things came out on the internet. Here's a photograph of what an air traffic control display looked like in the cockpit of a Spirit Airlines plane on one of the last flights to land before Spirit shut down. Can you read it? It basically said, and this is normally not done on these air traffic control displays. It says, they just let us know, we in the Operation Control Center, that we are officially ceasing operations. And it then says, at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's been a pleasure, take care, and Godspeed. Wow, right? That is sad. What's even sadder is the last in-flight announcement from a Spirit flight attendant on board one of the last flights, and it went like this.
So great conversations occasionally. A lot of crazy stuff has happened, but it's funny as we sit here. I'll speak for myself. I don't remember any of the bad times, just the good ones. So Spirit, believe it or not, started flying in 1983. I think it was called Charter Air at the time. And in 1992, it changed its name to Spirit. So we've been in the air since 1983. What is that? 43 years. And unfortunately, that's over. So thank you for your support over the years. And onward and upward, right? Go. God bless you all.
Let me add something to that, which should not go unspoken. In that 43-year period, not a single fatal accident. Think about that. We're going to miss them. And we're going to be following the story about what happens to those other airlines as well, because they're not out of the woods yet at all. Now, let me see if I can come up. My screen just went blank for a second. We're going to see if I can get it back. And hopefully it will. I can find it in a second. But in the meantime, let me tell you about a very funny story that made me laugh. I think it's going to make you laugh. You've heard me talk about, how about the airport lounges that the airlines have that have been totally oversold, that you can't get into, even if you're a member, where there are 90-minute lines to get in for only a 30-minute stay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I got to hand it to this guy in China, airline passenger in China, who figured out a way to scam his way into breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the airport lounge in China 300 times without ever taking a flight. This is what he did. He bought a fully refundable first-class ticket and went out to the airport every day without reservation, got a boarding pass, went through security, went to the lounge, had breakfast there, maybe even took a shower, had lunch, had dinner, and then went home. Came back and did it the next day. Did it 300 times. They finally caught him. But they couldn't prosecute him. He had access to the lounge, didn't he? He beat them at their own game, playing by their rules. Obviously, they won't let him in anymore, but he did pretty well for 300 consecutive days. You got to hand him to that. Now, moving along, there was a safety issue. I mentioned the fact that there was no fatal accidents on Spirit. There was nearly one the other day at Newark Airport in New Jersey. A United Airlines flight, a 767, coming from Venice, I mean, and we saw the video from an in-car or in-truck dash cam, and we also saw it from another camera. This plane was on its approach to Newark, was way too low, and just before it cleared the fence to the runway, guess what? It hit a bakery truck. The landing gear did. The driver was injured, but but did okay. And then, guess what? It almost hit a light pole as well. Nobody was injured. The plane was slightly damaged. The bakery truck driver was taken to the hospital, later released, but that was one close call. And obviously the NTSB will be investigating that along with the FAA because somebody was literally flying below the glide slope. Speaking of airports, if you're like me, I don't get excited about going to an airport. Do you? No, I get excited about going through an airport. And guess what? That's the way it's supposed to be. However, we all know that airports have now become quite stressful. And they did some research as to which airports in the United States were the most stressful and which were the least. Here we go. The least stressful airport in the United States, can you guess it? Minneapolis, St. Paul. It earned points for having reasonable car parking fees, and it's just a 20-minute drive from downtown. Phoenix Sky Harbor, also very high on the low stress list. Why? Just an 11-minute drive from downtown. And another low stress experience, which might surprise you, San Francisco International, but for another reason. On a good day, it's about a 25-mile ride from town, but the real saving grace for San Francisco Airport, 81% of its flights actually depart on time. Of course, the most stressful airports, I would run out of time talking about them for all sorts of reasons, but now you know. Let's go to some of your questions. Here we go. Here's one that says, what's going on with the hantavirus on that cruise ship? Should I be worried? You should be concerned. We're talking about a virus that is pretty lethal. I think people have already died and others hospitalized on this ship. It's a virus we haven't seen a lot of or at all. It's different than the norovirus. The norovirus is your standard run-of-the-mill gastrointestinal virus that we've seen on so many cruise ships. It's not lethal. It's just uncomfortable. And you may end up in a conversation with a porcelain telephone in your cabin. But the hantavirus, at least they've been able to isolate it on that one ship for the moment, and they're watching it carefully. We'll have more on that in the weeks coming ahead. But obviously, it's of concern. Matthew says, when will the rapid rail connecting Charles de Gaulle to Gare du Nord be completed? We're going to check on that. You got to hand it to the train system in Europe, especially from the airports. You land in Amsterdam, you land in Frankfurt. I mean, the train is right there. And not just the train into the city, the train system of the country that links all the other European countries is right there. And when you see Lufthansa canceling 20,000 flights on their schedule, it can only mean one thing. They're canceling a lot of short-haul flights, right? What does that mean? 2026 is going to be the summer of a lot of train travel. So if you're going to Europe this summer, do yourself a favor. Don't depend on airlines to do short hops for you because those are the flights they're going to cancel, at least in the short term. What you want to do, buy yourself a rail pass. You want to do that before you leave the U.S. That's in conjunction with your existing round-trip ticket. And it doesn't have to be a first-class ticket. Second class would just be fine. If you plan your trips properly, and they're good to like 33 different European countries, guess what? You can even sleep on the trains and save on hotel bills. But the bottom line is it's a much better deal than trying to fly between London and Paris, for example. That's not very good. Not cost effective either. All right, here's one from Ralph. As a retired pilot, let me tell you, the FAA has always been out of touch. Oh, he's writing me about the 90-second rule. We talked about this last week. The 90-second rule, which, by the way, is still on the books and is still, quote unquote, a rule, which is also enforced by the FAA. It says this, that every airline, in order to be certified every year, has to comply with the idea, at least, that it could evacuate a fully loaded plane with half the exits blocked and in the dark in less than 90 seconds. What drug are they on? Every airline passes the test. Now, up until about 3 years ago, you know why every airline passed the test? They got to pick who did the test. They hired the cast from Cirque du Soleil. You get the picture, right? Was there a cross-section of age, infirmity, disability, fear? No. There were people who knew exactly what to do and wanted to do it. And what a surprise, they all passed. Well, you want to get angry? What did the airlines do a couple of years ago? They went to the FAA and said, listen, we're not asking you to change the rules. We're just asking you to change the methodology of the testing. How about we can do it on computer? And the FAA said yes. So they built a computer model, and gee, what a surprise. Everybody passed the test. The next time any of you is on an airplane and you taxi to the gate, make believe that when you get to the gate, they called for an evacuation. Get out your second hand on your watch. Time the evacuation. You'll be at 11 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And in a panic situation, you think it'll be faster? No, it's worse because people are going in the overhead compartments to get their carry-ons, and it's a mess. And the FAA seems to think that that's an effective test that gives you a real-world scenario answer as to whether or not it can be evacuated at the same time that airlines are adding more seats to coach. You'd be kidding me. So, Ralph, I agree with you. The FAA is not being realistic, but thank you for your email. Here's one from Sean. The FAA requirements are a fallacy of the first order when it comes to real evacuations. Here we go. Beyond panic and indecision, and this doesn't include the struggle to reach down and extract a life vest if necessary, very few aircraft evacuations of recent days have seen passengers depart without any or all of their laptops, hand luggage. I believe there is not just a survival factor, but an inconvenience factor waiting in here that suddenly forms part of personal survival calculations. It goes, I think, something like this. I can probably make it out, but what good is it if by carrying on my computer documents, car keys are burning, being foamed, or soaking, or simply caught up in some post-event FAA crime scene investigation for hours, days, weeks, or months? I'd love to see a survey or two on this. Well, you remember the U.S. Air flight in the Hudson, the Miracle on the Hudson? When they landed that plane, nobody was allowed to take anything off that plane. They didn't have time. They had to get out on the wings in water temperature that was below freezing. And now, did that plane sink? Actually, it didn't. Did it fill with water? It actually did. Did it take a while for those passengers to get their belongings back? It did. Did they care? They didn't. They're alive. You know, people are always asking me every time I land somewhere and I arrive at a city, did you have a nice flight? You know, my answer is always the same two words. I landed. I flew in this metal cylinder at 500 miles an hour at 33,000 feet. I landed. I'm alive. I don't talk about the in-flight meal, the wine list. I don't talk about the rich Corinthian leather seats. I don't talk about whether I got my luggage or I didn't. The key is I landed. So, Sean, thank you for email. And that's, that tells you a lot, what you need to know. The safety rules are one thing. How the safety tests are done are another. Safety inspections are one thing. The idea of them. What about how they're done? That's another issue. And the FAA may be hiring more air traffic controllers. They tell us they're doing a better job. We hope they are. The FAA may say they're improving the equipment in the air traffic control centers, and I hope they are. But there are so many things the FAA is not doing and has never done that is a prescription for disaster. And they're not addressing it to this day. Not addressing it to this day. And so though I fly more than most people I believe in the inherent safety of the air safety that I'm involved in. I believe that the pilots don't want to die. I believe that no mechanic wants to sign off on a flight that's in trouble. The numbers are still overwhelmingly in your favor, but that's not the point. The point is not whether or not we have a great safety record, and we do. Look at Spirit. No fatalities ever, right? Look at Qantas. They branded the airline after that. But that's not the point either. The point is not whether you can improve on your safety, we all want to do that. The real issue is whether you can maintain your safety. And based on the FAA's behavior and their lack of enforcement, their lack of innovation, their lack of staffing levels, I think we all know the answer. They can't maintain it. And that should be concerning everyone. Look, we're spending X billion of dollars on the war. I'm not going to get into an argument on that. However, we need to figure out what our priorities are. If we spent in 3 days on air traffic control and safety what we spent on the war, we would basically have the most incredibly safe and responsible air safety system, which went beyond just air traffic control, but the inspection of maintenance facilities, manufacturing production lines, and everything else. Where are the priorities here? I'm not saying you're going to have to make a choice. I'm just saying, look at the dollar amounts we're talking about, and then it becomes a no-brainer. All right. Speaking of a no-brainer, time to go to the photo of the week. Here we go. Do we like it? I like it. Congratulations to Linda Massoni. She writes, warm glow on the Hierapolis ruins at sunset on April 29th. The green mountains and absence of crowds make this scene special to me. Where she's talking about is in Turkey, in Pamukkale, and also Denizli, where we, by the way, shot one of our 1-hour specials called Hidden Turkey. And you can't make up the light where that is. You can't make up the ruins and the amphitheater where that is. Most people don't even see that. They go for the white colored, stones. You got to go around the back to see what's left. And it's quite amazing. So thank you for that photo. And if you think that photo qualifies for one of your short photos that you want to send to us, which you send in, by the way, to photocontest@petergreenberg.com, and you think it's up there next to Linda's, and we agree, it is up there next to Linda's. And I hope you'll do that. Again, we're transiting the Suez Canal. Tomorrow, we'll leave Port Said and continue the journey. We'll end up in Alexandria, where we'll get off the ship, and then back to Cairo. And there'll be other ships behind us. For those of you who are thinking about that worst 4-letter word that starts with F, and you want to come to the Middle East, I'm telling you right now, you can and you should. I'm a big contrarian believer in not going somewhere in the on season, going somewhere in the off season. And when somebody tells you they don't want to go somewhere, that's when I go, unless they can adequately and convincingly, with facts and portfolio, give me a reason why not. And right now, here I am in Egypt, couldn't be having a better time. The weather couldn't be better. The sea couldn't be calmer. Doesn't get rough in the Suez. But the bottom line is, it's a voyage of discovery, and you learn something new every single day when you're on the Suez, and it's worth it to come. So I'm just letting you know that if I can come here, nobody did anything special for me, you can come here as well. A couple of housekeeping notes. Speaking of traveling around the world, I'm out of here tomorrow. You'll see the show, meaning the radio show, this Saturday, coming up day after tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't find it on your channel selector, it's okay. We stream it live at petergreenberg.com. And just tune in about 5 minutes after the hour, after the stations do their weather and news, and you'll hear the whole show. Where's the show coming from this week? Thousands of miles from where I am right now, and I'm not kidding. It's coming from Seoul in Korea, from the JW Marriott. I'll be there for the Virtuoso Symposium. I hope you'll turn in. South Korea has an amazing story to tell. I've been going there since 1978. That's the first time I put my foot over the DMZ up in Panmunjom. It wouldn't be the last time either. But what an amazing country, what an amazing economy, what an amazing opportunity to see so many things that are way outside of Seoul, either down south or even up in the north on the border, the coastline, well worth it. And one of the world's great airports, Incheon. They really did their homework when they made that airport. So check that out on Saturday. In the meantime, I'll be back to the U.S. Later on the weekend, And we'll see you next week from a distant location somewhere not in Korea and not in Northern Africa, otherwise known as Egypt. So, Anthony, thank you for doing the board Jack in California. I'll see you soon. Thank you all for watching. And of course, remember what I said about buying your airline tickets. Don't wait. You don't want to do that right now. Have a great rest of the week, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.